Good morning, dear students. Welcome back to the second part of the first chapter, Reproduction in Organisms. The topic for today's lecture is sexual reproduction. What is sexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, the offspring is produced by two parents of opposite sex with the fusions of gametes. In asexual reproduction, the offspring is produced by only one parent, but in sexual reproduction, the offspring is produced by two parents with the fusions of gametes. Sexual reproduction involves two parents of opposite sex. It also involves formations of gametes either by same or by individuals of opposite sex. It also involves fusions of gametes, two gametes, and we call that as fertilization. When we talk about sexual reproduction, remember the offsprings produced by sexual methods are not identical to the parents or among themselves. Let us recall back about asexual reproduction. What happened to the offspring produced? The offspring produced is identical to the parents in asexual reproduction, but in case of sexual reproduction, the offspring is not identical to the parents. If we look around us, we observe different kinds of organisms, and these different kinds of organisms are different in morphological structures. But when it comes to sexual mode of reproduction, these diverse forms of organisms share a similar pattern. Now let us first see the features that are common to these diverse organisms. To understand that, let us go to the phases in life cycle. There are three phases in life cycle. The first one is juvenile phase, reproductive phase, and senescent phase. Let us go and discuss one by one. The first one is juvenile phase. Juvenile phase is the period of growth in an individual organism after it births and before it reaches reproductive maturity. The juvenile phase is the period between the birth and the maturity. This juvenile phase is called vegetative phase in plant. Now let us go to the second phase, that is reproductive phase. Reproductive phase is the period when an individual organism reproduces sexually. It is the period when the individual organisms can reproduce sexually. In this reproductive phase, there are two kinds of cycles in female individuals. The first one is menstrual cycle and the other one is Estrus Cycle. Now let us go and study a little bit about these two cycles. The first one is menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is the cyclical changes during reproduction in primate. Example, humans, monkeys, and apes. During this cycle, the blood flows and it will last for few days. The endometrium, that is the membranes lining the uterus, is shed during the cycle. During menstrual cycle, the female does not permit copulation. Now let us go to Estrus Cycle. Estrus Cycle is the cyclical changes during reproduction in non-primate. Okay. Menstrual cycle is for primate and Estrus cycle is for non-primate. Example are cow, tiger, sheep, etc. Now in Estrus cycle, blood does not flow. In case of menstrual cycle, blood flows and lasts for few days, but in case of Estrus cycle, blood does not flow. The endometrium is reabsorbed during the cycle. This is a cycle when the female permits copulation. Most of the mammals that exhibit estrus cycle are seasonal breeders. Now, what is the meaning of seasonal breeders? Seasonal breeders are those organisms that have specific reproductive season. That means they can reproduce only in particular season. Some mammals contradict to seasonal breeders are reproductively active throughout reproductive phase, and they are called continuous breeders. Yes, continuous breeders can breed throughout the years. Example, human, apes, rabbit, etc. The last one is the senescent phase. Senescent phase is the period when an organism grows old and loses its capacity to reproduce. These are the three phases in life cycle of an organism. Annual and biennial plants. Now, what is annual and biennial plants? Annual plants are those plants that complete their life cycles in one growing season. And biennial plants are those plants that require 2 years to complete their life cycle. These annual and biennial plants shows the clear-cut vegetative, reproductive, and senescent phases. But in case of perennial plants are those plants that persist for many growing seasons. These three phases are difficult to define. A perennial plants like bamboo shows unusual phenomenon. What is that unusual phenomenon? The bamboo plant flower only once in lifetime, generally after 50 to 100 years. After flowering, the plant gives fruits and die. Another plant called Strobilanthes kuntiana flower once in 12 years. So in this type of plants, it is difficult to define the three phases of life cycle. Now let us go to events in sexual reproduction. Now let us see what are the events that take place in sexual reproduction. First one is formations of special haploid cells or gametes by meiosis, cell divisions. Second one is fusions of gametes in pairs, forming a diploid cells. Yes, the male and female gametes will fuse and form into a single diploid cells called zygote. Remember, gametes are haploid. When they pair, they form a single cells called diploid cells, and that diploid cells is called zygote. Now later on, this zygote will undergo repeated mitotic division to form embryo. Now this embryo will grow into new individuals. So these are the events that take place in sexual reproduction. All these events, for convenience, are grouped into three distinct stages: the pre-fertilization event, fertilization event, and post-fertilization events. So in the next class, we shall discuss about these three events. Thank you.